coaching.
27 minutes past 8, OTB AM. That is the whispering voice in the background of one Alan Quinlan. Quinny, good morning to you.
Morning, lads. How are you?
Dulcet Quinny tones there.
We're having our pre-interview
chat.
Production chat. How's life?
We're scrambling for rugby.
We're
a lot of egg chasing, hasn't there?
Well, there was a lot of trying to get your mother to come on the show this morning, but
just looking at the video here on Quinny's.
She's not returning.
She's going to kill me.
She's a wife.
To be honest.
There's the wisdom in the family went all in her direction.
She was walking up the street in Tipperary town the other day, and people were shouting across the street, "Go home, Mary Quinlan! Go home! You're gone for the last week." But asked her a bit of harmless fun. Really, I just was surprised that she was gone back into Thomond Park on Monday night. Yeah. And I thought it was a laugh. I couldn't believe the tweet went so crazy, and obviously a lot of people got involved. And look, a bit of harmless humour. I don't normally do that now, to be honest, but I just thought she's a great character, really, and it was just a little bit of fun. And a great Munster supporter as well for a long, long time. I admire her. She never stopped when I stopped.
Roger's a big fan. When he was on the other day,
he was always very close. Well, all our parents, in fairness, Roger's mum was a lovely mum, as all the other parents are. You know, Sheila O'Connell is a great character. Donica's mum, Mary, so many others, and they love it. And we've often asked about. People often ask about our kind of time with Munster and how special it was. Special for our parents as well. They had a great bond. They had great fun. Frankie Sheehan used to always say, about his own parents, Catherine and Frank, that they had the time of their lives, really. Do you know what I mean? My dad, who passed away a few years ago, he never really went anywhere in his life. He grew up on a farm very young. I think he was working full time at home on the farm where we grew up. Didn't get a chance to travel. It was hard work all his life, and suddenly, he got the opportunity to go to France and different rugby matches, and loved it. And they all had great fun. So that's a really important part. It's the same with the current Munster group. Their parents have kind of started that bond and journey, and Leinster parents, Connacht parents, Ulster parents, and they start to meet up and get to know the other provincial parents, if you like, the rivalries, and they go to Irish matches together. So that's a really important part of sport as well, and sometimes we forget it, the people who make the sacrifices, and my mum was a great character, and she's always supported not just me but my brothers and sisters as well going to sport. She often works and had to go to 2 matches in the evenings or 3 matches. She was dropping my brothers to other games, GA games, and trying to get home and get dinners made and all that. So look, that's really important. And Rog, obviously it was lovely to see his mum after the final as well, because Joan hadn't been that well. So sometimes we forget that, but they've had a wonderful time as well.
At that group, they're still obviously in regular contact, or
regular contact. Yeah, my mum organised a trip recently to Ballacastine in Limerick Junction, the hotel there, and they had a big get together. The parents stayed a night and had a sing song, drank a few bottles of wine, and that's lovely for them, because they've become great friends. So, and it happens, it evolves in sport. And as I said, the current group of players with Ireland and with the different provinces, that's nice that they can get to meet each other as well.
Can your mum enjoy watching Munster more now than when you were playing? Like, were there nerves when you were playing?
Probably, probably, because maybe she was, obviously most parents would be nervous about how well their child plays, or whether, in my case, getting into trouble and giving away penalties or whatever. And Nigel Owens put up a tweet, obviously, and you know what, she talked to every referee and it was nice, because that was kind of funny that you have your mum talking to the referee and saying, don't take any nonsense.
Were you ever like, oh man, will you stop?
Don't take any nonsense from my son. It was usually after the game, obviously, but it's nice to see that, and it's a different side of the game. It's a little bit lighter, obviously, and but last weekend, a lot of these people, Adrian, and I don't want to be going on about Munster again. I'll have comments flying in saying people are sick of talking about Munster all week, but there was people there, and I said it on Monday's show, that I've seen him at the very start. They've had a lot of misfortune and kind of misery around the team, and lack of success, but they've stuck in, they've still supported, and that's lovely to see them getting rewarded. it was an opportunity really that kind of came out of nowhere when 6 weeks ago that wasn't really on the card. So lovely for them. And I kind of sat back afterwards, and even Saturday night, just looking at people, and it just gave them such a lift, a lot of the older people. So it was lovely to see that, and it's a good story.
Who's your mother's favourite rugby pundit?
Alan Quinlan?
I don't know, to be honest. She's a big fan of Rogers, all right. They always had a great connection. So anytime he's ever, she doesn't say a bad word about anyone. It's funny, like it's like that. She wouldn't criticise anyone.
Does she follow your work?
A little bit, I think, yeah. She'd obviously listen to me when I'm doing the commentary and matches and stuff, but
would she be on to you about that? Like, would she?
Not at all, no. Listen, if I did the worst commentary ever, she'd tell me you were great.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Would you have got told
typical Irish mum, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you had any disciplinary issues during a match when you were playing, would you have got told off at home?
Not really. A little.
They'd have been saying, Jesus, you should have doubled down on that. That's
yeah, exactly.
So we haven't had you in since the squad was named, obviously, and I was sort of mindful of the fact that obviously you tend to, with an extended squad like that, it'll be reduced down further again, but we tend to look at the players obviously that weren't included in it. And I know that chatting to you before, we were chatting only a couple of weeks back about who would be the contenders for the URC Player of the Year, and you had singled out John Klein as somebody who would fit in that regard. Obviously himself, Hodnett, Frisch, and a few more miss out. It spoke to me the reality that this game was picked on March the 18th after the England game.
Probably. I think those players would certainly have been in the minds of Andy Farrell and the other Irish coaches, and they would take note about what's happened. I think obviously there's a system there, and there's a structure, and there's calls, and there's the way Ireland play, and it is different. So it's a short period of time for people to get up to speed if they haven't been in the squad regularly. So I think that probably came against newer guys like, well, John Klein hasn't been there in a couple of years, Anton Frisch, Shane Daly has been in and out of the squads in recent times, and the last couple of years. But I think, look, it's a short period of time. To be fair to the people who've been picked, they've all delivered. They've all consistently been high performers, and I was very disappointed for Jordan Larmour because I just think he's a wonderful player.
He's come on so much in the last 12 months again, hasn't he?
He's had an horrendous time with injuries, and he's a special player that you just can't really analyse. Is he going to step off his left, his right? I know, he hasn't had a consistent run even when he's come back, and
Jimmy O'Brien has
been so consistent, so wonderful player. But you can't have everyone in there. Robert Balakoon was someone I've always I love people that are a little bit different, and the difference with him is the gas, the pace. So there's players that are disappointed. I was trying to look through the squad and say, well, is it 42 or 43?
2.
There's 9 going to be dropping out of here, and you're kind of clipping 1 or 2 in each position, maybe, you know what I mean?
Have you clipped,
when you go back row centres, out halves, scrum halves, that's 4, props 5, hookers 6, second row 7, about 8. It's broken down into 8 little blocks. So
have you an idea
who you're
about
clipping? 1, possibly 2. Well, it's not really. Look, if you go to back 3, if we go through every name, Mac Hansen is a definite. Hugo Keenan, James Lowe, Jimmy O'Brien. So if you look at the other 4 that have been picked there, you've Keith Earls, Jacob Stockdale, Calvin Nash. The other 3, sorry. So
which one of those is most likely, of those 3 is most likely to make it?
Keith Earls is giving himself a great chance, probably coming back and reminded people.
There, done it.
Very well trusted, great experience, obviously. A position like Keith now would be very important for him. For him, very important that he has a really good pre-season in these camps and looks sharp. If he can be cutting it up in training, looking really in great condition, then he go. Then with the coaches, when he's someone who they trust, they know what he can do. if they see that sharpness, then he has a bigger advantage, obviously, over Calvin Nash and Jacob Stockdale. Jacob Stockdale was a starter when you think back under the Joe Schmidt era, the Grand Slam success in 18, the try scoring he was doing, but other parts of his game needed to develop. They've probably gotten better defensively in the kick chase and all that kind of stuff, but we haven't seen him being as prolific with Ulster or since then. So it's the same for every one of them. Anyway, you want to, I think Calvin Nash is someone who will probably bounce into that training squad and go feel better about himself, feel confident, given the consistency in the last few weeks and the way he's finished the season. So it's very difficult and it's a long way out. Centres, they're not going to bring 5 centres. So you think Aki, Henshaw and Ringaras are most likely going to go. Yeah. I think the interesting thing with Jack Crowley now from a fly half position is they may look at him as a possibility at 12, a reality of being at 12, an option at 12. Because you've got Ross Byrne, Jack Crowley, Kieran Frawley and Johnny Sexton. Kieran Frawley can do that job as well, for sure. So there's a lots of... Can
I stop you on that one particularly? Because as always, when he's writing in the Examiner, we've something to put to you, and he's had an interesting, Ronan Lagarde, an interesting point to make on the number 10 pecking order in his article this morning. And I'll read here directly from it. He says, he has moved ahead of Ross Byrne. Jack Crowley has moved ahead of Ross Byrne in the pecking order. Sport doesn't wait for anyone. Because of what Crowley did against Leinster at the Aviva, because of how he played in the final in an away setting in Cape Town, his development has been accelerated. We're no longer in a 50-50 conversation on the backup to Sexton. Crowley is ahead in that pecking order now.
If you look back to 6-7 weeks ago when Munster played the Stormers in South Africa and the Sharks in South Africa, Jack Crowley didn't perform well in both those games. Ben Healy came on in both of them and made a difference. He would have been disappointed. He's still very young, learning the ropes, but undoubted talent now being fulfilled. He's a fantastic player. He's a great personality about him. There's a little bit of niggle about him. He came off in that Stormers game and I think he was kicking water bottle. He was frustrated with himself that he made some mistakes. You handle the ball 60, 70, 80 times in a game as a fly half or whatever. I don't know the exact number, but you're over 50, 60 times. There's going to be a couple of errors in there, either kicks from all players, even at the very top level. Obviously, when you have a load of experience and gone through, big matches and big moments in your career and you get to a stage where you become mature, the mistakes or the composure word is there around the fly half a lot more. So they need to learn on the run, really. So it wasn't long ago we were talking about Ross Byrne being, after coming on against France, team looking really comfortable, loads of consistency around his performance, the big kick in November against Australia. So it's kind of fluctuating a little bit, and that's what we want. But I think they're different, and I think Crowley's ceiling is probably can be higher because he's a real running out half as well. You saw the break that he made in that final against the Stormers. Yankees just gets him close to the line. It was the one where Evan Roos got yellow carded. And Roger knows more than me about out halves, but I think, look, it's he
doesn't have the experience. If you're making the case for Ross Byrne, he has a little bit been there and a little bit done it in an Ireland shirt.
Correct, and probably
most recently
looks more composed. But the finish of the season from Jack Crowley and lots of big performances during the season. I picked out Stormers and Sharks, and I think if you had Jack on, he'd probably say I was disappointed there. But he's a brilliant player, and he's unbelievably grounded, and he has a little edge to him, and he's a real running fly half as well. The kick to the corner there for the Dermot Barron try, he got everything out of that, and it was a nervy kind of one. Oh God, is it going to go dead? So his game is really grown, I think.
To ask another way, if you're naming the 23 tomorrow for a World Cup game, who's in it? Are both of them in it?
You're going to get me lynched by the Leinster Brigade, really. Well, obviously, if Johnny Sexton is fit and it's a World Cup selection against Scotland or South Africa, he's your starting fly half because He's been brilliant, and we hope he has a good pre-season and recovers and gets that fitness level back that will be needed.
In the 22 shirt is,
given the end of the season, Jack Crowley probably. But that can change very quickly. They'll have little mini matches and stuff, and a lot of it will be down to how they're performing in training. They'll get opportunities in the warm-up games, so it could fluctuate and change very quickly. Again, if Ross Byrne, has a big moment like Crowley, well, he's still ahead. So we want to see that pressure from both of them, and I think even what happened in November with Jack Crowley starting against Australia, that kind of inspired Ross Byrne to kick on and lift his game as well. So we can't forget what Ross Byrne did against Racing and Gloucester and all these games. Okay, some of them, the Gloucester game, particularly the one at home, there was a second string, but he was brilliant in Europe for Leinster as well, so can't forget that. But it's an interesting one, and it's one that we want that depth. We'd love if the two of them, we were splitting hairs between them going forward.
And look at maybe a scenario where they're fighting out to be the starting 10 for the World Cup.
And Kieran Frawley hasn't really got that run. He's kind of maybe the utility kind of one that can play in a number of positions, which he can. So I don't know how he feels. Am I an out half? Do I want to nail my colours to the mast there, or still do this utility role? And dare I say it, everybody'd love to see Joey Carberry his opportunities around this World Cup are probably gone unless something drastic happens there and he's called in, he trains with him and does well. But he's still quite a young man, and hopefully he can find a little bit of a sparkle going forward and get back on track and probably see and understand what he has to do to reignite his career again, because it's been sad to see
on a human level. He must be going through the ringer.
You've seen this guy who's starting in France last year and playing with Ireland and been right on, being in New Zealand, all that kind of stuff, and suddenly he's doing the water messages from Munster. It's hard to see. If you're talking about the other positions, again, most of them are nailed on. You know what I mean? I'm not sure how many props will they bring. 5 or will they bring the 6? It's probably going to be 5. They'll reduce the hookers. There's 4 hookers there. I think they'll bring 2 hookers. To get in another hooker and call someone up is easy logistically with a flight to France. So will they bring 2 scrum halves or 3? Probably 2, I think. Again, it's easy to call someone in at short notice. If there was an injury in training, even on Thursday, you can have someone there Thursday night. It's interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see, will they add any players, or will they just limit this to 42 guys training and there's no extras kind of coming in, the way they have would have had a 6 Nations squad, and then there's 6 or 7 guys in a training camp with them. So that'd be interesting to see if there was 1 or 2 positions, but it's a big one for Ian Henderson as well. I think I looked at his name. This is just names that kind of jumped out when you write down the squad. He's really important. That he has a good run with these pre-season camps as well and gets back on track. Disappointing end to the season for Ulster, obviously. His season has been blighted by injury. Undoubted quality. And Joe McCarthy, it's a big one for him. I think he's a brilliant player, deserves to be in there and offers a different sort of physicality and brute force, and he's only going to get better. He's very young. The back rows then, people were kind of raising their eyebrows about just 1-7 in there.
Yeah.
Which is...
Well, that's the case for Hodnett, is it?
It's the case for Hodnett or Scott Penny. Scott Penny was brilliant during the season as well. So Nick Timoney would be disappointed.
Who's ahead between the two?
I don't know, because it's probably Scott Penny, because he's probably been in there more and trained with him, so he understands the systems. And when you think the system, it's about where the shape of players on attack, where they're running, are they staying on the edges? Is it a 1-3-3 one scenario with the props, second rows in the midfield, holding back rows in the wings and all that, on phase play and all that kind of stuff. So Ireland have a system there that's different, and they probably don't have the time now to start upskilling people as regards learn your role,
work with what you have at this stage.
Which seems like it's not rocket science, it's rugby, that you should be able to go into a squad fairly new, learn the role, but it's running it, the repetitive, and the big plus from what we've seen in Ireland the last while has been the accuracy around their passing and stuff like that. So no real surprises there. I think the uncapped players, Jamie Osborne coming in there, he's a very, very good player as well. So I don't think we're going to see any surprises as regards at this stage. The bulk of the squad is what it is. Nobody's going to come out of the outside that group and probably end up starting.
What emphasis do you have to place on experience then, Quinny? You look at those uncapped players, Nash, Osborne, Crowley and Tom Stewart, like, does that make decision making easier, like the likes of say Earls versus Nash, if you were to put it between those two? Well, do you pick the more experienced player because he's played at World Cups?
In the history of what I've seen, you won't see too many tweaks or changes from nearly all of us. Could probably go close to picking that squad. But the really important part here is, and I believe Andy Farrell will be the same, and I've seen it before in the squads I've been in, it's not just on the rugby field. So I probably got in an 07 squad based on my fitness levels. I came back from a very serious knee injury the year before. I struggled with my fitness. I had a cruciate done. I ended up going to New Zealand at the end of the season, but then the following season my kind of fitness levels went to a different level, if you like. For me personally, I kind of made a lot of sacrifice about diet, alcohol consumption, all that stuff that was non-existent really, and I really had an unbelievable run fitness wise. And I remember doing fitness sessions in Poland pre that World Cup, and I was killing it. I was 33 at the time, and I was just, my scores were unbelievable, and it was taken into account that here's a guy who was probably you think the career's over and that
leadership
at an
factor
age.
as well, though.
So that's my point that I have in my head. I think someone like Keith having a brilliant pre-season, and when they're doing the fitness scores, which will come into account, and the all that stuff, that's where you can win a few meters for yourself in the coaches' minds, where obviously they look at a player and they say, this guy is in unbelievable shape. So for Calvin Nash and they can win a little bit if they obviously look after themselves. And the older you get as a player, you realise your pre-season, the holiday situation is great. You have your 3 or 4 weeks off. You head off to the sun. Some people with their partners, others if they're not in relationships, they go away with the lads, the younger ones, and it's how you look after yourself. And historically, at the very start, carnage for 2 weeks back when we started going away like that. But the older you get, it's how you look after yourself in the off season, and you come back and you kind of, it's easier to get to a high level of fitness then. So it's about looking after yourself, and Keith will know that. I think the last couple of years his training regime has changed, and I think they call him Paul McGrath in Munster, that he picks his training days, but he looks after himself. It doesn't mean that you won't get injured. So for any players in there, if they, someone like Cian Prendergast in the back row, like does he go, well, the inevitable is going to happen here. It's great to be in the initial squad, but the Jack Conans, Caelan Doris, Peter O'Mahony, Josh van der Fleer, they're in, and the same as Gavin Coombs, brilliant finish to the season. Do they kind of go, well, buy into the narrative that they're not going to be selected because they have to find something different, a little bit of aggression, take control of the situation when they're training, and also turn up in great shape. If I was talking to any of these guys, I'd say enjoy your holidays rest wise and mentally and all that, but keep in shape. This is a big opportunity here come September, and you can win a coach over by doing something on a fitness test, or it's not going to be the determining factor, but all these guys are going to have to really come back in great shape, not start and end up in great shape, come back,
hit the ground running
really.
We'd love to see Keith Earls. That's, I think, would be the feel good story of the year if he could get in there. I saw her tweet last night. You're losing your Red 78 partner in crime.
Yeah, Niamh is obviously, because of her job and stuff, she's compromised a little bit now, timing wise, all that stuff. So yeah, we'll be looking for someone. It's been great. It's been really enjoyable. We've had loads of fan engagement this year, and obviously, the end has been super. The start of the season, where it's a bit doom and gloom, and they're part of a kind of a journey, really. And there's a bit of optimism with the new coaches come in. So the end was brilliant. Niamh was wonderful. She was great and great insight. So
she's class. She's so full of energy. I met her on the street after the Ireland-England game of the Men's Six Nations, and obviously everybody was buzzing or whatever, and did a great enthusiasm, obviously, for what was to come. We weren't to know at that point, but in terms of the Women's Six Nations and that, but she had
a tough period,
tough time, but like she's got a great natural enthusiasm. I can see how she brings players along with her, and she's very personable, and I'm sure has as evidenced in the Red 78, got
she's
a good
very enthused about
well.
The changes that are happening in the women's game. It's been well documented, the shortcomings, if you like, and people still talking a lot about that, and it was a tough Six Nations, a lot of young players, but I believe her. She's really enthused about change and how they can get better, and how things are changing in the game. So it was hard for her as a coach. I just couldn't bear to think what it's like. You're getting those tough games, but she's plenty of enthusiasm, and she was great throughout the last 2 seasons.
Quirky 1980 says, wouldn't that make a brilliant book or documentary? Stories from the parents of a team like that. Munster, the away trips must have some stories, which is a fantastic idea. Thanks a million.
Cheers, thanks, lads.
We'll be talking to you. I'm sure there'll be more stuff to chat about down the track. So.
Yeah, we'll be back. The squad will be up and running in the next few weeks, so
exactly.
It's a bit of a quiet period.